So welcome to We Figure This Out. In this little series of videos, we're going to talk about things we sell in a store that we may not know a lot about and you may not know a lot about. So together, we're going to figure it out through research and trial and error.
Hi, so in this segment of We Figure It Out, I want to talk about paint mediums. This is a question a customer had in the store. They came up with a number of paint mediums from Vallejo and asked me what exactly are they and what do they do. Now, I kind of had a rough idea of how these things work, but I didn't have explicit information, and I always like to know what I'm talking about when I'm talking to customers about products they sell in the store. So in this case, I figured it out. I went on to the various websites like ACAN Interactive and Vallejo, who are our two primary producers of this sort of thing. Now, you see the bottles, they're out there. This is an example. This says matte medium. So the secret was in the word medium. I had to figure out what a medium is. Now, a medium is defined as something that is added to a paint to change one or more of its properties. Okay? So a matte medium, for example, adds a flatness to the paint, increases the fluidity or the flow of the paint. It makes it more transparent because, of course, you're thinning the paint with this stuff, so of course it's going to be more transparent. And it extends the drying time somewhat, right? It also says it softens blending of brush strokes. Now, I read mediums and I was reading more and more about them. There's acrylic mediums and then there's mediums that have been used forever by people that paint with oils. See, Vallejo, I think their primary business is fine art paints. And they do really nice hobby paints for us on the side. But I think their predominant business is art paints. So they have came in at the hobby paint thing from an artist's point of view. So they've made products that they're familiar with selling to artists who do acrylic oil paintings and that. And they've made these products available to us to get those kind of effects in our modeling. That being said, it is my understanding that a medium is typically used with brush painting. So we have, in our hobby, we have people that paint historical miniatures, gaming miniatures, and things like that. And traditionally, going back for eons, that's one of the oldest hobbies there is, and they were doing it with oil paints, kind of the same paints as they use to paint paintings. So you have artist oils. And what they did was they did things to the oil paint just as an artist does. Like you see paintings and some of them are just flat paintings, but other ones have texture and they have things going on and effects and iridescence and different things going on. Well, they add these mediums to their paint palette and then paint it on their picture to achieve the effects they're trying to do. So Vallejo and AK has made these kind of things available to us to paint on our models and miniatures. So I just discussed matte medium, for example. There's also gloss medium. So again, as the title infers, it would add a glossiness to your paint. It would make it flow better. It would make it thinner, more transparent, dry a little slower. So all these things it does when you add it to the paint. So I see one, putting these down on your palette, your wet palette, what have you, and you got a blob of this here and a blob of that there, and you just kind of mix them together and you kind of get the texture and the effect you want, and then you apply it to the model. These are especially good for miniature painters because really good miniature painters do highlights, lowlights, midlights, all that kind of stuff, to get 3D effects on their figures. And these effects paints allow them to blend the colors. Just like when you paint with an airbrush, you get that feather from one color to another. Well, they do this with their brushes using these mediums to allow them to do those effects. One that I thought was interesting was a Crackle Medium. Crackle Medium is made by both AK and Vallejo. So a Crackle Medium is something you add to the paint. Again, it makes it flow differently. It makes it thinner and more translucent that. But also, when it is mixed between two coats of paint, so you lay down your base coat, you put the Crackle Medium on, you paint a coat over that, this causes the paint to actually crackle. So it's an effect you could do for marbling, some kinds of weathering, maybe an icy pond. I don't know. Your imagination can let you go. But can you imagine somebody actually wanting to put crackle on their paint? Car modelers hate that kind of stuff. We don't typically want that. Another one that was really interesting was metal medium. Both companies, AK and Vallejo, make it. And this has a sort of a metallic sheen. I don't know if you can catch it in the video. So you can mix this with the paint, and this will add an iridescence to the paint by adding it in the mix, and it will make it more transparent, more fluid, more, slow down the drying a bit, just all the other things the medium does, but it will give you this kind of pearlescence or iridescence. It also says you can paint this over, because it has no color, it's just a clear. Now you paint this over it when you're done to get some kind of sheen effect or a metallic glaze, if you want, over the top. That's another thing that both companies make, is a glaze medium. So near as I could tell, a glaze medium works similar to a wash. So you mix the glaze medium, and you're doing this on your palette, of course, so you mix this with your paint, and you start to work on a consistency that you want. Like you use a lot, you end up basically with a wash. A little bit, it becomes more of a filter. So in airbrushing, we use, in modeling, we put a wash on with a brush typically, and we want it to run in all the cracks and crevices. But if we put a wash or an airbrush, we create what's called a filter, which totally changes the look of the paint that we've already laid down. We can darken it up, we can dumb it down, we can make it look weathered, we can change the effect, like looking through a filter on a camera or on a lot of these programs we use for editing photos on our computers. We totally change the look of the model by putting the filter on. So this glaze medium, to my understanding, does the same thing for people that brush paint. You mix it with your paint to get the fluidity and the transparency you want, and then you paint that over the area you want to do it, and that will change the look of the paint that you've laid down. So again, to reiterate, mediums change the properties of the paint. You can mix them into the paint, and in some cases, like the Crackle or the metal medium, you can paint it over as an effect. To my understanding, these are all done with brush painting. That's what they're intended for. That's what they're designed for. Have you used them with an airbrush? Have you mixed this stuff into your paint and shot it through your airbrush? I'd like to know. Please leave your comments below. Please share with us, because we like to share information that makes us all better modelers and more knowledgeable. Again, the products are available from AK. These are the mystery bottles at the bottom of the rack. A lot of people don't go down there. They're all called mediums. They all sort of state what they are: matte medium, gloss medium, glaze medium, metallic medium. A retarder medium. I forgot to mention that one. Again, that's a medium. So we talked about retarder versus flow improver. So for airbrushers, we use flow improver, which is basically the same thing, but it's for our airbrushing. The retarder medium from these guys is meant to be mixed with your paint, again, on your palette, to slow down your drying time. So that should even out strokes and give you more time to manipulate it with your paintbrush. One way you know it's a medium as opposed to a thinner, right? Thinners are a different thing. Thinners just dilute your paint. Of course, they change the transparency and that. They don't necessarily slow down your drying time, in case in some instances, like when you're using an alcohol base, it can actually make your paint dry faster. That's why you would have to use a flow improver with that to slow it down, or else the paint could be dry before it hits your model. But I digress. So we've got the thinner medium, and we know that it is a medium because, as you can see, it's a white color in the bottom. That disappears when it's dry. It's kind of like similar to using clear coats from a lot of acrylic companies. You will see they lay down or they look white in the bottles, but when they dry, they're perfectly transparent. So in most cases, your mediums, whether they be gloss medium, flat medium, all the mediums kind of have a white milky color to them, which disappears when you use them. So that's how you tell a medium apart from an actual thinner. An airbrush thinner for Vallejo paints is perfectly clear. It looks like water. But a thinner medium, again, looks like milk or water. It has color to it, which disappears when you use it. So have you tried these things through an airbrush? I haven't. I think I put thinner medium through an airbrush for the Vallejo, and I think it turned out okay. It was kind of an accident. I got thinner medium thinking it was thinner for my airbrush, and of course it wasn't. But I seemed to get it to work without too many hiccups. So maybe I lucked out. Maybe it can be used that way. If you've used any effects like this through an airbrush, please leave your comments below. If you've used this stuff for painting figures and that, also leave your comments below. We'd like to know how you found them, how you worked with them, what your learning process was. Again, we all want to learn from each other. That's why I produce these videos, so we can all share knowledge and become better modelers. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you again soon.